Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican and welcome to another Railway Empire quick guide. In this video, we are going to take a look at city buildings, all the different buildings that you can place in our cities in the game, and what they do, what their impact is, some of the rules around when we can use them, and we're just going to try to come out with a nice understanding of how to manage the city buildings in Railway Empire. So obviously the first thing we really need to realize is that the first and probably most important building that we can place in the city is our train station. So obviously we can put train stations in. They can be 1, 2, or 4 track stations, and we can have as many as 2 in each city, and each city can only have 2. So once you have a city like over here in Leeds, once you have 2 stations, that's it. Even if they were 2 small stations, there could be no other train stations built in Leeds in this example. And the other building that we need to think about as a city building are these warehouses that are actually within the catchment area of the city. So this warehouse here and this warehouse here are actually both city buildings for Manchester. But we have lots of other videos to talk about setting up your stations, setting up your warehouses, so we won't go into that any further. But let's go look at the city itself. When we click on a city, we have this view which shows us the buildings that are in the city. And you'll notice there are 4 slots, and these 4 slots are basically 3 industries that will be in that city, plus a 4th slot for a special building, which we'll get into in a moment. So our industries become available to us as the cities grow. So let me show you a smaller city to start with and what they look like. Let's just go down here. Well, we can go down here to Bath, even though we can't build there yet. Here's the city of Bath. So in this particular playthrough, they are a very small city, under 20,000. They have 1 industry, the meat industry. Now that meat industry exists in the city, but can't even be upgraded yet. If we owned it, we would be able to upgrade it once the city hit 20,000. So there are certain levels you need to understand. 20,000 to do an upgrade on your first industry, 40,000 to put your next industry in, 90,000 to put the 3rd industry in, and then we have to hit 60,000 to put the special building in. And again, we'll get to those in a minute. So we need to grow our cities in order to put additional industries in, and the cities need to grow to certain sizes in order for us to be able to upgrade them, and they can be upgraded all the way up from a level 1 all the way up to a level 5. Let's go back and see a larger city that has a little more developed industry, and we can see what we're talking about there. So here we see here's a brewery that has been upgraded to a level 4, which increases its production and increases its demand for whatever it uses. Here's one that we own in this particular one that's up to a level 4. Here's another one we own that's only up to a level 2. But each of those, by upgrading, we do that through this right here. We can expand the industry for a cost, or we can, even if we need to, we can downsize it for a cost if we're overproducing the goods that we have, or we are unable to supply those goods. So in fact, that's a good point. Just very quickly, notice the utilization is very spotty here for this weaving industry. We would want to take a look at this. If we were trying to optimize this, we would want to take a look at the supply of the wool that's coming into Manchester here in this case, and try to optimize that to match it out. So ideally, we would run at 100% across here, and we would produce the right amount that would then line up with our other cities. But I don't want to get too much into that. We have other videos about city growth where we talk more about what industries do you want to build, and the sizes that you need and how to match up your production, all that good stuff. What I just want to cover here quickly is the fact that you have the 3 slots, 20,000, 40,000, and 90,000, and that's when those buildings can come in. And what will happen is if we build them, then great. If we notice a slot and we build them, that's great. But if a slot opens up and we don't do anything, a private investor will go in after a time, a private investor will go in and build an industry, and what they tend to do is build the industry that you don't want. They tend to build the most advanced industry out there that doesn't exist anywhere, and it usually can't be supplied with anything. It's usually a horrible thing, so you really want to put the industries in there yourself if you can. So, but again, that's back to city growth. So let's talk about these specialty buildings. And first of all, I want to show you the really special buildings. Okay, so we've moved over to the Great Lakes map, to the Dominion Day scenario, to take a look at the first kind of specialty building. And it actually takes up a space in our one of our three production slots. This is the trading center. And you'll notice this trading center is actually going to produce beer, but it does it by taking in wood. So the deal here, of course, on this map is we're way up to the north. We can't grow a lot of wheat. We can't grow a lot of cattle. It's too cold, but we can cut down trees. There's lots of forests. So they set up these trading centers, special buildings, that can then trade the wood for beer. Now, these trading centers are not something that we as players can build. So this is something that was provided as part of the scenario. In order to create beer in Montreal, we trade with wood. And we have the same thing up here, another example in Quebec. In order to create meat, they trade for wood there. So you get wood in and you produce meat. So that's the first kind of special building. Now let's take a look at the second kind. So now we've jumped over to the gold rush scenario, which still remains my favorite scenario. It's kind of the one I learned the game on. But I wanted to show you the next type of specialty building we have, and this is more common, that will have buildings out here taking up that fourth slot. So the slot where we would normally put in museums and universities and attractions, which we'll get into in a moment, here we have this thing called Wells Fargo Bank. And the bank is requesting 1 carload of gold per day. So what it's doing is creating a demand for gold. On the automobile scenario, there's a warehouse or a special trading center in Toledo, which actually creates demand for automobiles. And that way you get a demand for automobiles earlier in your scenario. This one creates the demand for gold because this one is all about the gold rush, of course, hence the name. And we end up in Carson City and Shasta and even other places generating gold, which then needs to be shipped into San Francisco. So these buildings as well, when they take up a spot like that, we lose the ability to put anything in that fourth slot. So now let's talk about that fourth slot and what we would want to do there. All right, so we've gone back over here to a more developed map. This is my playthrough of the Great Britain, Ireland scenario. And let's look at a city that's growing. Here's Oxford. It's growing. It's getting 88% demand satisfaction. And we have a museum in there. Well, that museum is creating 10% of that satisfaction. So we're only actually supplying Oxford with 78% of its demand, and the extra 10% is coming from this museum. Well, you can see how important that museum would be if you can get a city to say 52, 55%, something like that, and have a museum in there. Then you're going to be able to grow that city, even though you're not quite really hitting over 60% demand, which is what it takes to grow the city. So if you want city growth, you want a museum. Now, we could easily take that museum out and put in something else. We can put in a university. So let's put a university in Oxford, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Okay, so we've got a university. Now, what does this university do for us? Every time you build a university, your monthly innovation points, in other words, your research, goes up by 4 points per month. So if we look at our research, now Trixie, in fact, let me do this first. Trixie, we're playing with Trixie. She actually gets penalized for her research. Her research is horrid. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to knock that thing down for a moment. Now let's go look at our research for Trixie. Look at this. She's only getting 14 points per month. Okay? Now, if we go back into Oxford and build a university, now we can go look at her research. and now she's up to 18 points. So every university that you build adds 4 points of innovation to your overall research. So that's just going to help you get through the tech tree faster, do all your research and what have you. So one option, of course, with Trixie, because her research is so poor, you could go in and build universities. Another option would be to target universities as soon as you can in your cities if you don't need the city growth for your particular scenario. Because if you look at the research, every time we get the right ones, like more passengers by 5%, more passengers by 10%, increased power, more profit from mail. All these kinds of things can add up. More time, more passengers will wait longer, so you'll get more traffic. Increased profits from your mail. You know, all this stuff just adds on and on and on and on. So you could target research if you chose to, and build universities and increase that rate of research. And wouldn't that be with Trixie? I mean, you could do it with the other characters and just add on to already decent research, and that way you could really get through that tech tree quickly. So that's what a university does. Now let's just look at the third thing we can put in there. The third thing we can put in into our cities is an attraction. And it doesn't matter which one you build. They give you different ones just because they have different looks. But let's just put a nice little park out here in Oxford. And here we can even go down, never do this. But see, there's our nice little park. We just, here we go. There we go. We just put a nice little park in. Sorry, I'm not a very good driver. There's a nice little park we just put in Oxford. So Oxford has a beautiful little park. Now, what's the purpose of that park besides looking pretty? Really, looking pretty is meaningless for the game. But what it does do is, I'll just show you here. The attraction increases the number of people traveling to the city by 20%. Now, that's a lot. And if you think of, like, if you're playing with the lady and she's getting bonuses for passenger traffic and express lines and all that, and then you could add another 20% to the number of people traveling to that city, you could make some serious money. So like this line right here, we've got this line that's already making beautiful money. It's taking passengers and mail between Birmingham and Oxford. Well, that number of passengers, now that we've got that attraction in Oxford, this train here has 20% more passengers on it than it would have had we not built that attraction. So you can really pump up your revenue by building attractions in a destination city. And if we had one on each end, if we had an attraction in Birmingham as well, which we could easily do, then we would be getting double dip. We would get an increase in traffic on both ends. So we would see more people coming to see that attraction in Birmingham, and we'd see more people going to Oxford because they'd want to go to this nice park we put in. So if you're looking for passenger traffic, attractions can be great. And where they can also be very useful is when you have a scenario that requires you to do a certain amount of passenger traffic. This is a great way to boost up your passenger traffic. Now, it comes with a cost because it does cut down on your city growth. Well, it keeps you from getting that 10% bonus for the museum. But if you've got a good setup going, like here in Oxford, notice, see, we're still growing, even though it's down to 61%. So it's barely growing, but it is growing. If we can keep it growing and keep an attraction in there, we can make a lot of money. If we can keep it growing and put a university in there, we can do great research and go through our tech tree. And you don't need to be afraid about it. You can, knock them down and change. If you wanted to get through your tech tree quickly, build some universities, knock them down later, or you could even do like this. Put in museums first, grow your cities, knock them down, put in universities, rip your way through the tech tree, knock them down, put in attractions, and build up tremendous amount of passenger revenue. You could do, you just use them however you need them to meet your scenario. So the point being that you need to think about these three possibilities: the museum, the university, and the attraction. Understand what they do, which you can see is very simple, and use them to your advantage to get through the scenario and to do whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So there's all the buildings that you can put in a city. You can put stations, you can have warehouses connected to, you can have warehouses connected to the city, like right here. And you can build industries in your cities, and you can have the special buildings like we saw in the Great Lakes that are industry slots that do trading, or you can have these buildings like this, the museum or the university or the attraction, to help you either grow a city, increase your research, or increase your passenger traffic. So hopefully that helps you kind of understand your city building options, and I think you can see how you can use some of those buildings strategically to help you reach your objectives. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.